It is probably one of the biggest topic I've ever had to talk about in my life, because I never talked politics before. That's outside the hospital. So forgive my ignorance on the subject, and it's just my thinking process that I put together, and based on the information I've also received from some people who've helped me. We know, based from what other people have spoken earlier this morning, the issue is big and really has dominated our lives in Nigeria so far. And we do not seem to have solutions on site, or if we do not seem to have the will to implement them, as far as our actions have been saying so far. But inshallah, there has to be a turning point, and those turning points may start now, and I hope if they haven't started already, but we cannot leave it for the future. So the topic I've been asked to talk about is the, can we have the slides? I emailed them. Sorry. Shamsu, have you got the email? No? Sorry, I will continue anyway, and hopefully we can get them over there. The definitions of poverty and governance have already been made, and I don't need to repeat those at all. But suffice to say that government is actually necessary for the existence of a civilized society. That means even uncivilized societies have governments, but more importantly, we have to be civilized in the sense of civilization is the art of living together, not the Western type of definition, having the technology and so on and so forth. That is more or less a consequence of what we call some aspects of civilization, but not all of it. Because we're not civilized if human beings do not learn to live with one another and respect one another. That is what civilization is all about, and that's what our Muslim scholars have been talking about earlier on. Poverty's definition has been that of the condition to live in very much extreme situation with little or no money to support oneself, and this is budgeted to mean less than $1 or $1.125, as we heard from the general earlier on. We do have some statistics, some of which have already been highlighted before, such as malnutrition in Nigeria is probably about affecting 46% of the population minimum. Our infant mortality rate is the 80th out of the 83 countries mentioned in one study. Unemployment is very high. Youth unemployment particularly is about 50% now. And life expectancy is less than 52 years. So quite a lot of us here have gone past our sell-by date, given by the Nigerian standards, because of the infant mortality rate, because of maternal mortality, and many other factors that we know. Now, compared to these other third world countries, such as Gabon, which is actually 62.7 years, and Mauritius has 73 years life expectancy, and we're lagging behind in the 50s because of our government or inaccurate governing system. As we heard before, 70% of the citizens in Nigeria live on hand-to-mouth kind of living, which is not what we will call right. Unfortunately, 11 million children of school age are out of school. Now, this is actually going towards into destruction of our future. And even more unfortunate is the fact that 7.5 million of these are girls. And we know how important the education of girls and women are. And that is a very sad situation. The other class of people I have mentioned as the employed poor is that even though we said unemployment is about 50% or 46%, out of those who are employed, quite a number, if not majority, are still poor. People's salary will not last them 2 days or a week. Some have already borrowed much more than that, and the debtors the creditors are there waiting for them to collect the salary and pay it back. They can't afford to feed the family. They can't do anything because they can't even afford health, let alone everything else. And then the lack of ability even to store food that you have. In this country, we have the ability, at least we can buy something now, keep it for tomorrow, so that at least you can economize it. When you don't even have the electricity, for those who have the chance to have electricity, you can't even do that. Which then adds the expenses to you because the prices change every day and they don't change to get cheaper, they change to get more expensive. And these are all the factors that are contributing to some of the poverty situations that we've reached in form of prostitution, tourism, and everything across the youth. I'm not going to dwell much on the vicious cycle tree I have put in there, more to say how we keep going in cycles, and so far there's been no escape from poor governance, which I put at the top, because leadership is responsible, corruption, poor majority, and then desperation, lack of authority, because that's what leads to anarchy in the end, and then you have bad leaders coming out because everybody is desperate. We have envy and prejudice, even within ourselves. Our law enforcement agents are like everybody else in the country, obviously, either underpaid, overworked, and therefore corrupt. We tend to celebrate corruption. I get a job as a bus conductor, my whole family would be celebrating because it means I'm going to be rich. But that means I'm not living on my salary from that bus conductor. I'm actually going to be taking the money I get from that trade, whatever. And the honesty has gone amongst people. We lack accountability in everything we do, but that means we also forget we're accountable to Allah. We don't audit, and that means we have all generally become arrogant and feel we're above the law, and that is why people don't fear the law. We have had several budgets in the last 10 years or so where the budget's been made for probably at the estimated petrol price of $75 to a barrel. It's been sold over $100, and that extra surplus that has been coming from these sources, nobody has seen any increase or improvement in employment or security or anything else. Where's the money gone? Destruction of trust has become the norm among the poorest. Everybody despises the government and those are leaders, but they also support them if they get some cash out of them. We have examples where leaders such as some state governors can bypass the assembly to borrow money because that doesn't need to go through the budget. And then when they get the money to do something, to do a project, even that is stolen. And who's left to pay the money? The budget from the poor people. And then obviously allowing the outlawed groups to rule the country for political gains, such we've heard about the Boko Haram and so on and so forth. Amongst ourselves, we have culture changes that we need to address as well. Begging in one form or another has been destroying the North for a very, very many years, really, if not centuries, or decades anyway. And this has now gone from just street begging to begging door to door. You have people who have their own job is just to come and sit in front of your house until you get out in the morning so you can pay them some money and they go home. If you don't, they insult you, they abuse you, they say you're bad, and they go from one house to another. And that's what they do. Nobody will want to go and look for a job to do, even if they have the strength or the ability. And there are other things that people can do manually, and they can do that. The typical example we always say, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us in the Quran, and the Prophet sallallahu has also told us, that a bird wakes up in the morning without anything stored for food. And they go, they never come back hungry. But we don't do that. We're not living within our legal means. We, in fact, have in the habit of converting haram to halal. Corruption has now become halal. I used to remember the 10% that employees used to get when they give contracts. That became more or less the law that is automatic. Where has that become automatic from? We then also have to accept Nigeria is a multicultural and multi-religious society, and we have to learn to live together and therefore stop allowing our politicians to use religions to bring disharmony amongst ourselves. We need to respect ourselves as individuals, and no one can exist alone, and we need to live within our means. Nigeria is mixed, as I said, and mentioned some of those before as well. Now, I have this to say about our rich community in Nigeria. I really don't feel those who are rich because they don't live like rich. And the reason I say that is, if you are rich, you should be very happy, you should be secured, you don't feel threatened, you don't feel sort of marginalized, you don't feel different. But really, to get to that level, you are looking for friendship from low security agents, judges, whatever. You may even need to befriend somebody who has a petrol station so that when you go to the queue, you can jump the queue and get your petrol and go, and so on. Otherwise, you buy it in the black market, and so on and so forth. Even mechanics. You then have to have your own water supply, and you have to live in a house that has got a lot of security, sort of gadgets all put together to make your life better, while the outside of your house immediately is sheer poverty striking at you. And that does not even include the franchise. I got this cartoon from one of the Nigerian newspapers, which I thought I should share, but I hope the response to that is not actually what we hope for. You can read it yourself. So, now I pass that very quickly. This is why we must change. As I've said, really change has become inevitable, because we either do it blind or it's forced on us. We've been complacent, and now we're having to deal and answer for the likes of Boko Haram, and so on and so forth. So if you don't do something, if the majority keep quiet, then the minority who are vocal, who do whatever they want, they succeed. And in the eyes of Allah, we're all guilty. We're all guilty. All the people that have been destroyed before, the people of Shai, the people of No, all of them. There are some who know that the evil ones are there, but the rest who didn't know, who are not part of it, claiming ignorance, did nothing, and that's the problem. We have to change to respect our leaders, but obviously they have to respect themselves. Our current trend, as I said, is not sustainable, otherwise will lead to anarchy. And we have to invest in our future generation, which has already been destroyed. We cannot just keep praying in mosques and praying to Allah to help us. Yes, Allah can help us, but I think we need to help ourselves first, because if Allah's help comes, we may all be part of that destruction, and we don't want His wrath and anger to be on us. We have to change the culture of our ulamas and the religious leaders to stop being beggars among to the rich people, to stop praying for them and having I don't know what people may wish to call it, but we know how people go and ask the malams to pray for them here and there, and some are not even religiously doing it. They're actually committing shirk in the art of doing it. But nevertheless, they're doing it in the name of Islam, which is very, very hurtful. So the way forward, at national level, we obviously talked about selecting the right leaders, what's mentioned before, I don't need to go much over it. We talked about the need for accountability. We need to have people who think, who can plan better for the future and get an audited account at all levels. We have to have fairness and selfless service for the nation as a whole, with equality for all, and we have to have people who love and fear God, which is the bottom line. Or at least, even if they are non-Muslims, they are passionate and patriotic to the cause of Nigerians as a whole. What can we do as individuals? Well, our contribution to society. Certainly, we can't all bottle things up ourselves. We do not have to compromise our dignity and honor. We campaign to our people not to be stealing their votes and everything else, which tends to happen nowadays. If somebody goes for an election, I stand for an election, whatever it is, all I need to do is to go to my area, give them 50 or 500 naira each, and I'll be guaranteed their vote. And whatever I do afterwards, squander the money, they don't have any problems with it, which is wrong. So we have to know those who represent us, and we have to make sure they know what they are doing and that they are the right people for us. And that will make us respect them. And equally, even if they are leaders, they are subject to listening to advice. And we should not be afraid of advising them. Somebody already said we need to set examples. Charity begins at home, and then invest in the future generations. I've just highlighted some of the qualities of leader which have already been mentioned, so I don't need to go over this, because in the interest of time. Corruption, we know, is not unique to Nigeria. It's a global affair, but ours is far, far greater. We need to have infrastructure which is independent of political ways embedded in the culture. For example, no matter who is in power in this country, the electricity goes, you have health system, you have educational system, you're only looking at how to make it better. So it doesn't matter who is in power. And the corruption within that is actually very much minimized. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. Why can't we have a system where all of these kind of things that we need, basic needs, are all established, and then the politicians are there to try and brush over them and make them better? The cost of Nigerian politics is too high. We can't afford it the way it is now. I'm not saying we change from democracy. We should go on to continue democracy, but we cannot be spending more than 50% or so of the budget in actually financing the political structure of Nigeria, because that's not sustainable either. And despite this, we have not stopped the wave of getting the money out through squandering means. That is one way of creating stability and increase opportunity for jobs and self-reliance. We have to provide basic amenities, as I said, health, education, security, transportation, and then job security through fairness and transparency and affordable living standard. I just wanted to mention one or two stories about a village in Ethiopia, which there was a program about it actually on TV not long ago. My wife was telling me or reminding me to mention. This is a village that has been very, very poor due to the famine and all this in Ethiopia. I think his name is Kajan, I'm not sure. But what they did was they've been getting aid from externally, and their leaders were squandering the aid. They're not using them. The communities stood up together. They decided they will make small collections between themselves and start financing themselves for their own projects. Contribution, small amount, let's say 20 naira, 50 naira, 100 naira, whatever. That's how they started. Initially, they looked after the young, they provided the well for water, and so on. Before you know, they're building school, building dispensary, and so on and so forth, to the extent that the charity organizations who were giving money to the leaders stopped giving the money to the leaders, they gave them the money. To the point that they built dams, and then they started actually exporting things outside their localities. We don't have that kind of thing in Nigeria. Why not within our community? These are small examples. They've been in worse situation than we are. We have the resources. Why can't we use them? Malaysia is another example of a country that was much, much poorer than Nigeria. We exported palm oil to Malaysia, and now they're one of the world producing palm oils. The system of government is so good that we can see the developments in Malaysia. It's not hidden by anybody. I was in India in 2005 and New Delhi, and alhamdulillah, one thing I saw that I came back with in my head, which never ever changed and shook me very well, is we went through New Delhi, the old city, and that is on the day there was no market, no shops, everything was shut. There's only one street that was full of people, and I went to that street. We drove through it the whole length, about a mile or so. They were selling nothing but old books. And the queue for people and children buying those books was huge. Just old books, because that's what they can afford, but because they value education. They value the youth. And we have to learn something from that. What can the CMF do? CMF so far is a small organization. We're not going to be able to take the burden of Nigeria on our shoulder, but we should. Because if nobody else does, we must. Even one person can start to say, well, look, I must make a change. And what kind of change am I going to make? So we need to build on the current excellent work that has been started. Even if it's local to a city or to a person, we build on that. Because really the course appears to be good, and the current leadership, alhamdulillah, Allah guides them, and they're doing a very good job. We need to be doing that. Yesterday, I'm glad to hear we had an offer from our leader, retired Lieutenant General Dambazo, who offered to use their NGO in Nigeria to link up with the Nigerian Muslim Forum here. Sorry, I put CMF there, it's my mistake. Not Coventry Muslim Forum. I'm used to yes, it's Nigerian Muslim Forum. So anyway, what I'm thinking is we have to make Nigerian Muslim Forum a household name in Nigeria through activities. And one of these is actually using the media. And I know last meeting we had, beginning of this year, there was a talk of getting a radio station or something online that we'll start using. We have to be getting to the people. We have to educate them. relentlessly, no matter what. We don't know what we seed, then the fruit will become more, inshallah. But we have to, that's the only way to empower people, to educate them. As somebody said earlier on, we have riches of youth here who are highly educated, respected people. And all of you can go back and lead a nation if you want to, with Allah's help. And you must therefore be able to stand up to that challenge. And I really ask you to do that. You need to be trained, because leadership is not something we take as a joke, we do just beside, oh, by the way. We have to be very sensible about that. And therefore, I ask, maybe the Nigerian Muslim Forum may find a way to link up with the likes of the Muslim Council of Britain that does leadership training programs, and see that people who are actually in the verge of going back go through some kind of leadership program. Please don't say you are an engineer, you are a scientist, you're a lecturer, you're this and that, therefore you have nothing to do with politics. If you are the only right person we have in the society, you have to stand up and help. When you get to the level that you can say, yes, everybody is now doing what is right, and there are people who are more able to do this, then you can sit down and say, let them do it. And then we have to remain non-partisan and pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for that. In conclusion, therefore, Nigeria, as I said, is not a poor country in terms of resource terms, but our moral resources so far in terms of how we commit to ourselves is what we're very much lacking. And that's what I talked about, the lacking in ideas. People lack action and commitments. How many visionary meetings has the federal government set up? We had Vision 2010, and then we have Vision 2020, when nothing of the 2010 sort of was implemented. And then we have the some point agenda. Even if one would do, that will be fine. So we just need to put a target, know what we need to do, and get people to start acting on them, inshallah. And then we've been going for the easy option so far, and I think it's time we really have to face the challenges that is ahead of us. Particularly the situation is bad in the north. I know it's equally bad in other parts of Nigeria, but we have a challenging situation of illiteracy and poverty there. But illiteracy will make poverty even more, because it means people are doubly, if not quadruple, disadvantaged. We have to change the direction of getting our leaders out of our society, because if we don't change the system will change us, and I hope that does not happen, inshallah. So we continue to pray for Allah's guidance. Assalamu alaikum.